This is the FlipNerd.com Expert Real Estate Investing Show, the show for real estate investors, whether you're a veteran or brand new. I'm your host, Mike Hambright, and each week I bring you a new expert guest that will share their knowledge and lessons with you. If you're excited about real estate investing, believe in personal responsibility, and taking control of your life and financial destiny, you're in the right place. This is episode number 313, and my guest today is Ron Carlson, the founder of Renovation Gurus. Ron started a general contracting business after struggling as an investor to find good, reliable contractors, a problem that a lot of real estate investors have. So today on the show, we get into a lot of important details that we haven't talked about really all that much on the show before after 300 plus episodes here, including how to find contractors, different types and levels of contractors, and how to avoid a lot of common mistakes with hiring and paying contractors. He goes into what to look for in terms of whether things are potentially going to go south, when you start having problems, when to interject, and the right questions to ask, and a lot of common mistakes that people make. So if you rehab houses or maintain rental properties or do make-readies, anything like that, you're going to learn a lot in this episode, so don't miss it. Please help me welcome to the show, Ron Carlson. Ron, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Good, good. This is a topic near and dear to my heart because a lot of folks know I've primarily been a rehabber. I've rehabbed hundreds of houses over the past several years, and people ask me questions like how do you find contractors and stuff like that, and I struggle with it a little bit because I have been very fortunate to have found a really good contractor that, like I said, is in many ways kind of like a brother to me now. I trust this guy implicitly. We've been together for a long, long time, and there's none of the traditional issues a lot of people have with contractors about trust and reliability and stuff like that. We just have that relationship, so I feel blessed in that regard. But I know a lot of people struggle with finding good contractors, and I have to certainly with different subs or specialists and stuff like that. We still have problems, but I'm excited to talk about finding contractors and kind of what questions to ask and making sure that you find the right people to help you get your job done efficiently. So welcome to the show. Sorry, I was long-winded.
Thanks. I think I can help answer a lot of your questions because we're in the trenches all the time in this particular field. So yeah.
Well, tell us your story a little bit about how you got into being a contractor, and want to talk ultimately a little bit about the difference between a contractor that works with investors versus kind of a retail type contractor.
Sure.
Big differences there.
Yeah. So a long time ago, I just really started reading books on real estate and decided, I want to try this out. Started wholesaling, took some classes on wholesaling. Realized I was giving away a lot of my equity. It's a great exit strategy most of the time, but sometimes you're giving away a large percentage. That's why it's called wholesale.
Yeah.
And we started flipping houses, doing pretty good. Our contractor was actually working with the home investors guy, and the home investor guy was increasing the volume. We were increasing the volume, and the contractor just broke. I mean, he couldn't run 20 houses at a time. He was only, about 4 crews or 16, 18. And it worked out really good, but we're like, we'll just hire more contractors. Well, we didn't really know what we were doing on contractors because overall he treated us really well, this contractor we were working with, kind of like your friend. Maybe he is your friend, I don't even know. But he just wasn't big enough. So we're like, we'll just go hire a couple more. And we started hiring other contractors. We found out, okay, they weren't showing up on time. They weren't doing quality job. They weren't bidding the jobs properly, something like that. One guy in particular, his name was Roger. Don't hire a contractor named Roger. Just joking. He took, I didn't realize how he stole it, and I didn't know that he actually stole it from me, but he took about 21 grand from me on one house and 24 from me on another house.
Oh, man.
And what I mean by that is once I fired him, that's how much money it took me, more than what he bid me to get it all back together. There was materialists in, bad quality, that type of thing. Hired another guy. He hit me for a 30% change order at the end. And when you're doing a high interest loan or a hard money loan, 30% is a lot of money. You're like, oh man, lender didn't give that to me. So you got to come up with that. Ultimately, I had about 5 houses going that were my own personal houses. I fired everybody, had a couple vacant houses, and sat down with my business partner and said, all right, Now we're a construction company. We're going to figure this thing out on our own. And we started to rehab our own houses. We started to build processes and systems. Hey, as the client, what do I want from my contractor? As a contractor, what should I be giving my client? As far as emails, estimates, accurate estimates, estimated timeframes. What are we going to do when something bad happens? Because it's rehabbing houses, something bad happens on every house, right? There's always a variable there that you didn't know was there, especially when you're in hoarder houses or floods or burnouts or something like that, conversions. So we just started rehabbing our own houses. Literally, we didn't have any tools. We didn't have any crews. We hired a whole lot of people. We fired a whole lot of people. We started to see patterns. We started to see, hey, this particular type of contractor works like this. This particular type of contractor, when this happens to him, he shuts down, or when they have to get paid like this, or they're not going to work right because they need money for their crews. And so we started to be a little bit more fair with them, I guess, instead of so stringent. And we took a lot of hits, learned the construction world, but ultimately we built a construction company. We're doing about 30 rehabs a month, 25, 30, something like that. We're working with hedge fund companies, property managers, a lot of flippers, some landlords. And we typically don't do your mom and pop restorations. When grandma calls me for a bathroom, we don't do it. When Aunt Susie wants a kitchen, that's not what we do. We like them vacant, we like them dirty, and we like to just go to town on them. I don't want to go fix a leaky faucet, if that makes sense.
Right. We'll talk a little bit about the difference, because I know all contractors aren't the same, and if over the years I've tried different things, I've talked to different people, and you've got the person that is coming around in their wrapped vehicle that you can tell has a lot of overhead. You're like, oh, that guy's not going to be cheap. You've got the guy that calls you on the way there because he doesn't have gas money to get there, and everywhere in between. So, what are talk about? And then of course you get the retail, the retail people too that I would have maybe work on my own personal house because I want some things that are not as important to me on an entry level, kind of rental property, let's say. But talk about kind of all the different flavors, if you will, of contractors.
So there's really two breakdowns from what you're talking about. The retail, it's just a beast in its own, and I'll touch on that first. And then from the other question that you're addressing, it's really the type of management, how much you personally want to be involved. The lower, if I could put them in classes, the lower the class of the contractor, the more you need to be involved, the more they need to be micromanaged. But let's talk about the retail client first. The retail client, they're just a different animal. They're not investors. They don't think like investors. They want different walls painted different colors. They want different textures. Typically, specifically when you're rehabbing a property that they're living in, now you're moving all their stuff so you can repaint, you can retexture, you're tarping, you're throwing plastic. Inevitably, you're going to break something. You accidentally bump their hutch or their heirloom that their grandmother gave them, or you're getting dust everywhere. They're trying to sleep in the closet, and you're trying to rehab the living room. It's just a different animal by the nature of that, because they're a little bit more time consuming, because they're a little bit more tedious. They are very, very, very picky on everything, quality, on price. You're going to charge them a little bit more, because the truth is they're probably twice as much work going back and forth choosing colors and that stuff than an investor.
Right.
Most investors that we work with, they give us some free reign. Some of them want to be involved, some of them don't. The best ones for us are, hey, look, here's my budget. I don't really care what you do with it. Just do it nice. We like those because they're vacant. I'm typically doing one color on all the walls. It's typically one color pattern. Like, let's say I have an investor that I'm doing a lot of houses with. I know that it's the exact same vinyl plank, it's the exact same laminate, it's the exact same carpet, it's the exact same exterior color. Right. And that cookie cutter is really good. There's some flaws in it. With the investors, they're typically like, hey, look, just put a nice tile in there. I don't need a $5 or a $10 tile. The $1.99 stuff or their 59-cent stuff will work as well.
Sure.
Part of that is the ARV of the property. The higher ARV, you're going to use better quality products, but there's a way to use low quality products to make them look high end as well.
Yeah. We were the same for my business. We rehab hundreds of houses, and I think in every situation but a couple, we used the same paint color for everything. Sure. And the couple times we didn't, they were like higher end houses that we tried to get creative and make the bathrooms a different color. And we ended up regretting that, because then, you got to go back and do touch-ups later and stuff doesn't match. And it was just a lot of issues. So yeah, I'd say kind of streamlining that. We use the same carpet and the same tile until they're out of it, and then There's usually some sort of replacement that's pretty similar, and just kind of keep it pretty similar over and over again.
Yeah, one thing when you're building that cookie cutter program, if you're an investor doing say 4 houses a year or something like that, is actually re-getting the material. There's some scratch and dent places, or there's some like outlet stores that you can go in, you can buy the leftover tile. That's awesome. You might have a good deal, but if you're 10 square feet short, you can't get any more. Now what do you do? So when you're building that cookie cutter program, you want to make sure that you can get that same material over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how you, if you're, for folks that are listening to the show right now, I think one of the benefits of doing volume is that we're going to talk, maybe we could talk about contractors, like working with clients that you work with kind of on an ongoing basis that never stops. You're doing a house or 5 houses a month for that person. Mm-hmm. And then the investor that might be listening now that does 2, 3, 4 houses a year that, not necessarily with your company, but with other contractors. What I found is on the contracting side, let's start there, that if I'm important to somebody as a customer, like I'm their primary source of income, that they're more reliable to me because I'm going to give them the next job and the next job and the next job. Sure. Where I know that folks that, do a house and then don't do anything for 2 or 3 months, then do another house, and then they call that person is on to the next thing, obviously. And so it's hard to expect a contractor to be as reliable. But the same thing happens with materials. It's hard to get efficient because 2 or 3 months later, the materials have changed, right? Some of them have, at least, or the reps that you used to talk to have changed jobs or whatever it might be. But maybe talk about the difference between kind of doing, small volume versus larger volume as an investor. It's time for a quick announcement. We'll be back to the show in less than 30 seconds. PassiveRental.com is your source for turnkey, done-for-you rental properties. If you'd like to be an investor and not a landlord, please visit PassiveRental.com to learn how to purchase cash-flowing, professionally managed rental properties in the hottest rental markets across the country. We can also help connect you with financing for your next property. Invest the easy way today and get started by visiting PassiveRental.com. Maybe talk about the difference between kind of doing, small volume versus larger volume as an investor.
As an investor, the smaller volume, it all depends upon your experience too. So if you can do 4 houses a year and you've done 100 houses, that's a different client than if you just started and this is your very first house.
Right.
Typically, your first house, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to try to get more involved than you might need to, but you're trying to get involved because you don't know the contracting world. And there's a rhyme and a reason for us as contractors to work with a small guy. If they're doing like 4 houses, and then same on the bigger guy. On the smaller guy, you just have to be more cautious. I mean, I was thinking about this last night. When you're hiring your contractor, a lot of people aren't going to like this that I say this, but don't hire your friend and don't hire your brother, your sister, or a relative, because typically you need to be able to hire somebody that you can fire. And if without experience, you don't know how to indicate whether you need to fire them or not.
Right.
So first getting started, do your due diligence first. Do your due diligence on the contractor, and then try to get at least a material list. For example, if you went to Home Depot or an outlet store or something like that and say, hey, this is the type of laminate I want, this is the color paint I want. If you do that prior, then it's easier for the contractor to bid you out properly. When you're the big guy and you're doing, 20 or 30 houses a year or whatever that number is, anything probably more than 5 houses a year, well, then you and your contractor probably already have a relationship. He's already going to bid you out on, I know what kind of flooring, I know what kind of backsplash, I know what this, and this is. But the little guy has to be a little bit more ahead of the game, because if they're not, they're going to get a bid, and then they're going to come back and be like, oh, I really wanted hardwood floors, not engineered hardwood floors or something along those. So if you just have your material set aside in the beginning, you're going to get a more accurate bid. And then I always probably use 3 contractors that can show you their work, not just say that they're contractors.
Yeah. Yeah. I any other kind of tips you have on how to, because I think it's a natural problem to say, to be an investor and kind of know in your mind what you want done, but it's hard to communicate that sometimes, or sure. You think you've communicated it, but they didn't read it that way. And so they come back later and they say, no, I didn't include that in my bid, for example, And so, I mean, one way that I've kind of found I'd like to hear your tips on this. And again, I've had a little bit of a different situation because I've had, one person that's not done every house that I've done, but kind of been fortunate there. But is to basically say high level stuff that I want for the whole house. I want switches and outlets changed in the entire house. I want new texture in the entire house. And then kind of get into the specifics of the rooms. Like the bedrooms are, I want new baseboard, new doors, and new ceiling fans or whatever it might be. But it's sometimes we think, well, of course I wanted all that, but we didn't communicate it, and the contractor wants to get the job, so they bid it maybe on the low side, and then you come back later and say, well, no, I wanted this, and like, well, I didn't include that, or I didn't include that, and then that creates all this friction, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have perfect examples of this, and my best solution to your answer is get as much of it as you can in your original contract and in writing. What you said or what you say when you're on the job, everyone's going to forget it. Everyone's going to have their own side of the story. I said this, you said this, it's what he said, she said, war. But when it's in writing, and this is one thing that we learned when we first started doing the remodeling. For example, contractors that we used to use, they would do something like kitchen $5,000. Okay, and literally the first contractor I was telling you about that was working with this other home investor guy, he's a perfect example. He told me this kitchen would be a certain amount of price, and I show up. And I was like, hey, man, where are you going to install the granite? He's like, oh, the granite wasn't in the kitchen price. You got to call the granite guy. And I was like, well, that was $1,200, so
right.
I wasn't really calculating on that. And then we installed the granite, and I was like, well, where's the backsplash? He goes, oh, that wasn't in the kitchen price. I mean, my kitchen price was this, and this.
Exactly.
And same with hardware. He didn't have hardware on there. So, $400 for the backsplash, $1,200 for the granite, and some people don't realize that they go hand in hand too. When you're doing granite, you're typically doing new sink, new faucet. And he was going to use my old faucet on my new granite. Well, I don't really want you to use my old
right.
granite. I want a new faucet. That thing was dingy. So getting it in writing is huge. And then, so what we did in return, because when we first started, we started in the appliance, and we had the same problem. Hey, you told me this, but I thought that texture and all the tape and bed was included in your paint price. Well, no, tape, bed, texture, and paint, they're all separate costs. And, it costs us as a contractor a little bit labor and material for both of those. So once we started breaking it down line item, now like when we write a kitchen bid, it'll be something like this: upper cabinets, lower cabinets, this amount of square footage of granite, this amount of square footage of backsplash. We'll sometimes even put in there that the backsplash tile can't exceed $1 or something along those lines. An undermount sink, a P-trap, a garbage disposal, electric plug-in to the garbage disposal, because you can install a garbage disposal, but if there's no power going there, now there's a little bit of an extra cost.
Right.
Hardware, hinges, resurfacing, GFCIs, which are missed a lot, the actual faucet itself, the cutoff valves below. We'll itemize each one of those, and we'll put $10 on each one, or whatever that price is. And then when there's a discrepancy, we'll say, hey, you weren't bid on this, or you were bid on this. Look, this is what it was included, and the price per square was included. So getting this specific, and it can actually be, I don't know the right word that I'm looking for, but very meticulous, I want everything written out. Like ceiling fans. Am I putting a white flush ceiling fan in there, one of these $30 one, or am I going to put a $200 ceiling fan in there that has motion sensors and a switch, a little remote that I can change it on? Be specific on that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Typically when we're working with investors, I'm like, hey, look, we have a $5 budget for this, or price per square foot. And then I'll come to them and say, what color do you want? Here's what you can do. But sometimes they're like, oh, you said that I was going to get this. Here's a perfect example. See, labor, you got to know how your contractor's bidding it as well. Is your labor and material and your tax and install and their markup all included in there? Or is it not? We did a house for a homeowner just recently. We try not to do that, but we did one in Plano. And we had on the granite a certain price for the granite. Well, that included our markup, our install, and all that. So he went to the local granite store, and he found one that matched our price, but that did not include install, and it was higher level granite and stuff like that. He says, well, you bid me out at $37. This one's $36. You can install this. I'm like, well, the price of the granite is $36, but what about the labor? What about the cutouts? What about the install? What about the polish?
Right.
if I add all that, I still have to install it. Like I guess I can just throw a slab in your kitchen, but there's sometimes a discrepancy on that you want to be specific on what does the bid actually include. Right, and there's really about 4 things. You have labor, material, tax, and markup. And who's paying for that? Is the contractor paying that? Are you paying that, or is one paying a portion of that? If you break that down in the beginning and it's really detailed, you're not going to have as many problems when you.
So who breaks that down? So imagine, you've learned the hard way, right? This is kind of how you got to where you are. But a lot of investors, they don't necessarily know. They've never installed a P-trap. They've never run electrical to anything. I'm in that group. So, and I've done so many houses that I know a lot of that stuff. I know what has to happen, but I don't know how to do it, for example. But who's actually preparing those detailed bids? Is it the investor saying, these are all the things that I want? Or are you saying that you should only work with a contractor that bids jobs at that much detail?
The truth is, if you're rehabbing houses, you need to get some education on the construction, or you're going to get taken advantage of. One good thing that I always encourage people, especially when they're new, when you're seasoned like yourself and you have a contractor, you guys are speaking the same language. You guys are, going to lunch together every once in a while. He's probably coming to your Christmas party or whatever. I mean, that's different, but when they're in the beginning stages, you're building that relationship. And the truth is, the contractor doesn't trust you. You don't trust the contractor, right? And you're both trying to be as safe as possible. And when you're new, you don't speak contractor. You don't know what a P-trap is, like you just said. You know that there's plumbing underneath the sink, but plumbing under the sink there's an air gap valve. I mean, there's a bunch of different plumbing. It's not just like one piece that goes under the sink. So, comparing bids, if you get 2 or 3 bids, which by the way are really hard to compare contractor to contractor, but if you get a couple different bids, then when this contractor bid me out this on this kitchen, this contractor bid me out this on this kitchen, you can kind of look through each other's bids and then question the other contractor. Well, does yours include a garbage disposal? Because this contractor was going to put a garbage disposal. Is that a level 2 granite or level 3 granite? There's a price difference between the two. Is it a tile backsplash or no backsplash at all? Are you dropping electrical or you're not? If you get 3 bids, then typically the one contractor will get most of it and the other 2 will get the stuff that the other contractor missed. Otherwise, you're going to get hit with a change order later, probably. If they miss something, you're probably going to get hit with a change order, or you're going to have some friction between you and the contractor as far as, you said this, but it was another thing. In my opinion, that's why most contractors get fired. You said that you can do the kitchen for $5,000. I thought that included appliances. It doesn't include appliances. Well, you're a joke. Beat it, nerd. Right?
Well, let's jump into the taking action segment. Here in just a second, because I know I want to tell everybody that's not going to see this part, that I want you to jump over and see it, is we're going to talk about how to find contractors, what questions to ask. I want to talk a little about how to pay contractors the right way to make sure that you minimize your risk and all those things. Thanks for joining us up to this point in the show. The second half of our show is restricted to only Flip Nerd Pro and Elite members, and only accessible on flipnerd.com. If you're not a Pro or Elite member yet, you can upgrade your account in about 1 minute by visiting flipnerd.com/upgrade. Depending on membership level, you'll get access to off-market properties real-time, including real-time email and text alerts for new properties listed in your market. You'll get access to hundreds of full-length expert interviews, and Elite members get access to the Flip Nerd Lab, which includes detailed masterclass trainings, 2 live webinars a month where you can interact with leaders in the industry, and access to our Elite Mastermind group, where you can interact with hundreds of the top real estate investors in America to build relationships with those that are actually operating successful real estate investing businesses. By visiting flipnerd.com/upgrade, you'll learn much more about our membership options. And once you've upgraded your membership, come on back and listen to the rest of this show. Wish you could watch or listen to more flipnerd.com shows? You can. As a premium member, you can get access to the full length of hundreds of past shows at flipnerd.com/shows. Or hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play. While you're there, please subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And if you like what you hear, we'd really love a positive review. It's the ultimate high five for us. Show us some love by subscribing and giving us a great review today.